Welcome back to Status Detail, and hopefully you enjoyed that intro. I had a lot of fun making that one. I've been watching a lot of Stranger Things, so we had to do a little Stranger Things 80s vibe on this cool 80s car. So as you guys can see, we're going to focus a lot on interior on this one. This is a pretty old school Wolf of Wall Street, all white on white spec Lamborghini Countach, and you can see how dirty these seats are. It's safe to say that, you know, these maybe hadn't been cleaned ever, or if they had been cleaned, it's been, 10, 15 years maybe. So a lot of interior work to be done here, and we're going to talk about some pretty unique processes that I've actually never shown on camera before. So first up is pretty basic, and you have seen me do this before. This is just a Geon leather brush, and then we've got Geon leather cleaner mild, and standard process that for the most part fans of our channel have seen me do before. You spray that into the brush, you spray a little bit onto the seat, and then just real light agitation. We're not doing anything too aggressive or too hard. We're not scrubbing it like we're trying to get some crazy stains out of a pot or something. Just real light, real gentle, and the bristles are really doing the heavy lifting and the work for me. And you can already see just doing that alone. Check out that little leather square and how clean it is and how white it is compared to the other ones around it. Pretty amazing, right? So now you're going to see I'm doing this a second time because I thought I could get a little bit more out of it, and I think that last 10% kind of comes out in the second time, and you can see that before and after was pretty pronounced, pretty crazy. So the entire interior is going to get this process like around 2, maybe 3 times. I'm going to do each section basically that I'm working. So it's not like I did the whole seat one time, right? So the whole car is going to get cleaned with Geon leather cleaner and that leather brush to basically get the top layer, or what I would call the easy dirt, to come out, right? And you can see in all these before and after shots that, we're doing a really good job, right? Like this is something that you can do, that I can do, that really anybody can do. This is just standard scrubbing something with a brush and you wiping it off with a towel. Like anyone can handle that. And you can see basically how good Geon leather cleaner mild really is. Even in this situation, you don't really need the heavier hitting version. Just the mild version gets it done. The point of this process is we want to remove as much dirt as we can to get off of the seat, because this process that comes after this, which is the leather oil system, that I don't want that to be removing everything that we're removing right now, because I can get this off easy. That leather oil system, which we'll talk about in a second, that is really there to really go deep into the leather and really get the hard to remove dirt out and to make the seat softer. So no matter what you're doing when you're going down the avenue of doing like a leather restoration or a really deep leather cleaning, or I call this like leather rejuvenation or leather hydration, is you still got to clean it, right? So that other product that we'll talk about in a second is very specific purpose for that to go into the leather, and we don't need to use that yet, because you can see, again, how amazing those before and afters are. Now this, I feel like I'm going to butcher the name, but I'm pretty sure it's called LEATHERIQUE, or some people call it LEATHERIQUE, is a company that's been in business for like a really long time. It's like 100 years or something, and they actually aren't really a company for cars in the sense that they are a company for leather. So they just specialize in leather care products. It's kind of funny, you can see I spilled some in the background there, and that's actually not a problem, because the whole point is to kind of drench the seat in this stuff. We'll talk about that in a second. So this company makes leather care products. The whole point of this product is that basically it is designed to rejuvenate, to hydrate, and just breathe life back into old leather. Doesn't matter if it's your sofa, if it's your car seat, your motorcycle seat, your recliner that you got in the basement, whatever's made out of leather, this stuff can go on and it can make a dramatic difference to the surface. So now that we have the car all clean, for the most part, from the previous step that we just saw, it is time to basically just slather this stuff literally all over the car. Some people put this on their bare hands and do it and say that the heat in your hands actually help it go into the leather. I like using a glove because it's a little bit of a messy process. And then if you really want to get into it, there's a bunch of different ways we can do this. You can take a heat gun and actually heat the leather or the surface up, which will help the oil go further into the pores of the leather. Some people leave this on for 2, 3, 4 days, which I think is a little extreme, but there's no right or wrong way to do it. You can absolutely do it that way if you want to. In this case, we left it on for about a couple hours and then I removed it, but the trick is you want to put a lot on And then once it's on, if you leave it on 30 minutes, say, and you come back to it, you're going to see that some areas actually absorb a lot of the product. And those areas are the ones that are really dry and really prone to cracking. And they're dry because the oil was sucked into the leather and started hydrating it. The parts that don't suck it in typically are relatively hydrated and actually don't need very much of the product, to begin with. So this is why some people like to leave it on for like 2 days, because they keep reapplying and like really, really hydrating it. I've actually heard of people in some Porsche forums, and I think a lot of 993 guys that have mentioned this, that they'll actually put this stuff on when they store the car in the winter time, put a plastic bag over the seat, and then leave it for like 4 months. That's really extreme. I don't think you necessarily have to do that. But again, leaving it on for a long time has zero negative effect. It's just, you can do it for a year or for a day or for an hour or for 10 minutes. Like, it doesn't really matter. There's no wrong way to do this. You don't really want to get it on like your carpets or anything like that. But that's kind of why this stuff is so cool. Again, you can do this at home, just like you can scrub something and wipe it off with a brush and a towel. This is just a labor-intensive process, and it's a time-consuming process, because if you're going to do this and you leave it on for 10 minutes, I think you're wasting your own time, which means, like, if you're going to go through this process, leave it on for at least an hour or two, because that's what it's designed for. Now you can see once the product is coming off, now you use a product called Pristine Clean, which I actually did not film in this process. The first product was called Rejuvenation Oil. The second product is to help remove everything is called Pristine Clean. And then I actually go over everything after that with a little bit of like panel prep, which is what we would use before we ceramic coat a painted surface. I use a little bit of that to go over the whole thing, because that whole deal is designed to dissolve oil and remove it from the surface, like for ceramic. But in this case, because we did put oil on the seat, we want to make sure that we did remove all of that oil. I don't want the customer to get in and kind of like put his elbow into a spot that I missed and get a bunch of oil on it. So that prep at the end does help kind of just remove everything and make sure it's good. It doesn't like completely undo what you did. What you did went fully into the leather. You can't undo that easily. So the point is, once you've done all that stuff, the leather is going to be very soft, very supple. It's going to look nicer. It's going to feel nicer. It's going to smell nicer, and it's going to help prevent cracking in the future. Because the oil went into the leather, it actually pushes the dirt out. So when Geon Leather cleaned about 85% of it, that last 15% is cleaned by the oil, because the oil goes into the leather and pushes the dirt out. And that's why it really, really cleans it really, really good. So you guys obviously know that this car didn't come here just for that leather cleaning. So of course we did do some other detailing stuff, which we're not going to put a whole lot of time into this video on. But when you have a Lamborghini Countach in, we are going to show some cool stuff. So we did a full exterior decontamination on the car. These cool white wheels cleaned up really, really nice. We used Brake Buster and then just one of our many different soaps that we use. I'm not sure which soap I used in this video. It was either GSF, Bathe, or CarPro Reset. I am not sure which one it was in that foam cannon, but all of them will clean about the same. And as you can see, these wheels really clean up nice after the pressure washer hits that remaining brake dust on there. And yeah, so the whole outside of the car gets deconned. The paint was in pretty good condition, and just, any part of any large detail from us is going to include a really in-depth wash. We spend a couple hours on this stuff, and then after the car is actually cleaned, we do a really thorough, just through all the door jams and like engine bay stuff typically as part of it. And sometimes that'll be extra. You can always ask us about that kind of stuff. But it's really cool to do this process, and especially the paint correction coming up on these white cars, because white cars usually, unless they're brand spanking new, they usually come in kind of gray, like a little tinted gray in there. And when they end up leaving, they're like totally brilliant, bright white, and it's super cool. So I'll show you that after stuff in the end shots of the video, because you can really see it's just an amazing transformation to white. But yeah, this wash process is pretty straightforward. There wasn't a whole lot of surprises. There wasn't any tar or any crazy like clay bar type decontamination to do. It really just needed a really solid wash, And I've talked about this in other videos. Sometimes we clay bar and sometimes we don't. And in this case, because the contamination was so minimal, I basically just clay bar with the polisher. Because anything that's in the paint is going to come out in the polishing pad when you're using obviously an abrasive. And what you have to do is, if you have a lot of contamination, you have to be mindful of that and basically just switch your pads out often or blow the pads out often. If it's really bad, then obviously you totally need to clay bar that. You can't screw around with that kind of stuff because that'll just contaminate the pad too much and cause a lot of problems. But you can even see like how clean the glass was, right? Like the glass rinsed off pretty well. The paint didn't have any proper wax or anything on it. But when the overall car is this clean, clay bar is not needed. Clay bar is, I always like to say Ammo NYC from, Larry from Ammo NYC always says, clay barring is kind of like going to the emergency room. Like, you don't just go there for fun, right? Like, you break out the clay bar when you need it, not when, like, you're just having fun on a weekend. Because you don't just go to the ER for fun on the weekend, right? If you get a paper cut, you put a Band-Aid on, but you don't run to the ER, right? So, this just needed the wash. It wasn't that dirty. So you can see, like I said, the car wasn't that dirty, but that doesn't mean that the car didn't need some help. So obviously we have some swirl marks here. If this was a black car, you'd be seeing a lot more of it, but because it's white, it really does conceal it pretty well. But, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say that was a 7.5 to an 8, maybe a 7.5 in, severity of swirl marks. There was 1 or 2 sanding marks. You could have seen one a second ago on the hood. And, yeah, pretty straightforward paint correction. This Lamborghini appeared to have relatively medium to hard paint, definitely not soft. I wouldn't call it soft by any means. That was kind of interesting. This was the first Lamborghini Countach that I've polished, so it was kind of a learning experience for me to find out how hard or soft the paint was. But ultimately the paint came out really, really good. Now you're going to see in these after shots that the paint is much better. However, you're probably looking at it going, Evan, I still see some swirl marks. What's that about? Well, when you're working on a very old car, this car is around 35 or 40 years old or something like that, this is a restorative detail to preserve what this car is. I don't need to remove all the swirl marks on this car to, quote unquote, make it perfect. The point is, this car needs to be paint corrected again in the future, more than one time. So we need to preserve as much of the original paint as we can. We don't want to screw anything up. We don't want to go through so much paint, have 0 swirl marks, but not be able to do paint correction in the future because we made the paint so thin. And that's kind of a fine line of, you need to understand when you're doing a restorative detail and when you are doing a high level, let's make it perfect detail. This was not a let's make it perfect detail from the paint standpoint. Once we got the paint to about 90-95%, we ceramic coated it and locked it all in, so this car will look good for many years, 5 to 7 years. We did a 7-year coating on this car, so hopefully it won't need any polishing for at least a couple years. The average person will want to polish the car again maybe in 2 or 3 years, because a lot of people are meticulous like that. But very important to understand the concept of, it's good there are still swirl marks in the car because that means we left paint on the car. If I had gone further than that, it would mean that we aren't really sure if we removed too much or too little because you don't know how far you went past the last swirl mark that was remaining. So I saw those after shots when I was doing that, and I said, okay, perfect. I'm comfortable with that amount. That means I didn't remove too much or too little, but I definitely made it better, and that's what we were going for on a quote-unquote restorative detail. So I wanted you guys to see this because it's pretty unique. So it's very difficult to hit the brake or the gas by itself. Like I have my foot all the way to the right. It's literally against the trans tunnel. But when I put my foot down, the left part of my foot is hitting the brake pedal. So I literally can't hit the gas right now. This is relatively easy to hit, just the gas. And then the clutch is over here, and that's pretty spaced out, pretty much okay. But when you need to do this, you can't do it. So you need to completely reposition your foot like this to be able to hit the gas. And then I'm pretty sure this is carbureted, so I don't want to hit the gas and flood it. But now I can come back over and do it. But where I would normally put my foot is more like my heel would be up here. And now I literally, again, I can't hit the gas. I can only hit the brake. And if I slip my foot behind, right, now when I pull my foot out, it's getting stuck. Now I'm stuck on the brake and I can't get my foot out. So this is a very tricky car to drive because you can really get yourself in a situation where you can't hit the right pedal very easily, and that can be pretty scary when you're driving like $1 million car. So now to show you the clutch is right there, right? There's the brake, gas on the right, and then my left foot's on the clutch. So when I hit the clutch, see this now? There's a dead pedal on the left here, and I'm hitting that. So to not hit that, I need to move my foot over. Now I can get through. You can see how close I am to that dead pedal. I can go even further to be on the safe side, right? Like that. But now the problem is when my foot's on the brake, oh, look at that. It's hitting that foot. And now even bigger problems. If I need, because these are so close, when I'm hitting the brake with my right foot, I'm also hitting the gas again. So all three of these feet, like my 2 feet and all 3 pedals are literally touching this at the same time right now. So to do this, you need to end up having your heel really far back, using the tip of your toe to hit the brake, and now we can make this work. Or you need to wear really narrow shoes, which can help, or you just take your shoes off completely. And if I do this barefoot with socks on, like I could manipulate these pretty well. But your first reaction is to get in, put your feet where you would normally do it, and you're like, oh crap, like I can't. You know, like my foot's all the way against the trans tunnel, I'm hitting the brake, I can't even hit the gas. I'm down here now hitting this. When I come back off, if I move over, I get stuck on the back side of the brake. If I keep my foot off the clutch and then put it back on, I'm gonna hit the trans tunnel, and then I got a lot of problems all at the same time, right? So it's difficult to drive a car like this. Also interesting is this car has what they call a dog leg first gear, which is back into the left. So where second is normally, this is first gear, which means third gear is technically second gear. That's obviously neutral. And then if we throw this thing here, if we throw this little guy over to the left, it like locks out reverse. So now we're in reverse. Or you take it out of reverse and then you're going to put that back. And then this is first, second, third, and so on. So pretty interesting, pretty different. When you combine a dog leg, when you combine that dog leg with the crazy clutch pedal and brake pedal being so close together, you've got like a lot of problems on your hands when you're driving $1 million car. Usually cars aren't like that complicated to drive, but this one's pretty hard. Thank you guys so much for watching. Obviously, when we work on a Wolf of Wall Street with a plate like that, all white on white, like exactly spec like the movie, you gotta reenact the famous scene that everyone knows. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, you guys are awesome for supporting this channel. Please like, subscribe, comment, all that awesome stuff. I have so many more fun videos coming, and I look forward to seeing you guys real soon in some more videos every Sunday.